And inequality and poverty have been exacerbated not only by COVID-19 but by the recent civil unrest. But government's efforts will be in vain if South Africa's private sector does not join in to support the change that is needed. Lungisa Fuzile, who's the chief executive of Standard Bank South Africa, says this is no time for the private sector to sit back. He joins me now to discuss this further. Lungisa, many thanks for your time this evening. So can government alone provide the mechanisms for growth, or do we need a renewed effort to partner with the business community in order to achieve the goals of an inclusive and equitable economy?
Greetings, Rupi. Without a doubt, a partnership would work better. It's been proven to be the case. South Africa has got a very vibrant private sector, and at this time when the sovereign government, that is, has got fiscal challenges, it makes a lot more sense even than before for government to work side by side with the private sector. We are connected in a very, very integrated way anyway. So using our resources, pulling our strengths together to serve all South Africans, to work to improve our lot, makes a lot of sense.
And that's very interesting because a lot of businesses have expressed their concerns about being in South Africa, about South Africa being an investment destination. In fact, many of those who would declare really good dividends, as in the mining sector, for example, would give those back to shareholders instead of reinvesting that in the country. And that's because of policy uncertainty, amongst other things that may exist in South Africa. So with that, how can businesses support government's efforts?
There's a lot that we have been doing already as different businesses. There is a lot more that we can do together. Just a minute ago, on your own program on eNCA, there was talk about the payment of social security grants. The announcement by President Ramaphosa of the 350 grant, the payment of close to 20 million grants to other beneficiaries would not have been possible, especially at a time like now, for an example, without the banking sector doing everything that's possible to reopen their branches, to make sure that the ATMs work and they've got cash in them replenished. And of course, where infrastructure has been destroyed, making arrangements to have temporary or mobile ATMs available and accessible to people within reach. That's just one example. But take an even more important example, not diminishing the importance of grants by any means. The rollout of infrastructure, the financing of infrastructure requires institutions in the financial services sector, banks, asset managers, insurance businesses that pool all the savings in the system in South Africa, but even across the globe, and make those savings available to help fund the investments. The technical and technological capacity that is in the private sector, the construction businesses that we saw building some of the world-class stadia, some of the world-class roads, railway lines like the one that Gautrain runs on, like the PASA trains run on, all of those things would not have been possible with a government working just by itself on its own. However, combining the expertise, the resources, the strengths across the entirety of South Africa, in fact, bringing those from around the world would propel us to achieve our objectives even far much faster than it would be possible for our government on its own trying to do the same.
Right, and I hear that very clearly, and it obviously speaks to the importance of the private sector, particularly small and medium enterprises, to growing the economy. And this is particularly important in the most recent event where Transnet was experiencing a cyber attack, and it took a while to deal with it. And obviously, if there was some expertise coming in from the private sector, this may have been a different situation.
I wouldn't even hazard to speculate that Transnet, which is a public entity and has got highly capable people that I know and respect, didn't cooperate with the private sector in solving its challenge. That's just how the world of today works. I would imagine that a big state-owned company like Transnet has got private sector companies doing one or some other thing to help it achieve its objectives. Ropiwa, I belong to a school that I think many practical and pragmatic South Africans belong to, which is a school that doesn't obsess with whether things are done by the private sector or the public sector. A school that simply acknowledges that the issues that South Africa faces, the challenges that South Africa faces, be they social, economic, or otherwise, do not want us to be stuck in conceptual theoretical debates about the importance of one or the other between the private sector and the public sector. Rather, we should accept that there are complementarities between these two, and more for that matter, constituencies in our society and the economy, and play each one of these constituencies to their strengths. And we happen in South Africa to have a very, very strong private sector. Not because government is weak, that's not the comparison I'm making. But the private sector in South Africa has got strong balance sheets at this point in time. You made the example of the mining sector for an example. South Africa has got very good a very strong financial sector, well regulated. It's comparable to those of the first world part of the world. Of course, we also have weaknesses that represent the challenges of the third world. But the most important thing is to know the strengths that exist in our system and always harness them. Use them as a launch pad on which to build a better South Africa. A South Africa that is inclusive, that creates opportunities for the majority of South Africans.
Right.
That is what we ought to preoccupy ourselves with,
right,
as opposed to the debates about whether we should have a bigger government or a bigger private sector.
Right.
Both
Lungisa,
exist.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, unfortunately. A very important discussion that we obviously will have to catch up on at another time. Lungisa Fuzile, many thanks for your time. He is the Chief Executive of Standard Bank South Africa. And, of course, tomorrow